This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation Pop Experience, making Mount Rushmore is returned. Return is returned. I don't know. It's a long night. Hi there. I'm Andy Atherton, your host slash moderator, and I'm actually a panelist by proxy. First time ever I'm doing that on this show, so it should be interesting to see how that works out. This is our Father's Day episode. This is dropping right before Father's Day. For Mother's Day, we did TV moms and movie moms. Tonight, we're doing TV dads and movie dads, giving our perspective Mount Rushmores. And let me get the panel in here that's going to give their list and break it down. First off, he is one of my co-hosts on the Pop Goes the Classics Disney run, where we're talking about all the great Disney animated films. Steve Riddle. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Andy.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
All right, ready to talk about some TV and movie dads here?
Yeah, this should be fun.
All right. Also joining us for the first time ever on this show, but not a unfamiliar voice to the pop experience. You can hear him on 3 different shows, actually, that are running, although one will be done by the time this show airs. Yeah. You can hear him every Wednesday on It Was a Thing on TV, along with his buddies Mike and Chico. You can hear him on Into the Spidey Movieverse, a new pod that's in its, I think, your 3rd episode dropped in May as of this recording, where you finished off the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi trilogy, and you are 1/3 of Pop Goes to the Couch, the Mighty Ducks Game Breakers. Greg Diener. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Andy. It's Game Changers.
Game Changers, I know.
Yeah, what? Game Breakers, Game Changers, same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's the second show of a night. I'm usually a little punchy, so.
Hey, it's Father's Day, Andy. And to quote Ralph Kiner, to all you fathers out there, happy birthday.
Awesome. Great. And joining us, look, he was on his debut episode, was the last episode, and he's back for more. He's a glutton for punishment. Calvin Crowell. Hey, Calvin.
Hey, Andy, how's it going? Greg, Steve, how you guys doing tonight?
Yeah.
Very good.
Hey, what's going on?
All right. Very nice. Thank you for returning, Calvin, 2 in a row. It's very nice. You're getting like Steve a little bit here. Steve Steve is one of my most loyal and great panelists. So I appreciate everybody who comes on the show. I don't know if I ever say that. I have a huge pool of panelists that humor me by coming on these shows. I do monthly records of 2 episodes. So I appreciate every one of you comes on. I don't think I ever really say that out loud. So I just want to thank everybody who's been on the show and will continue to be on the show as it goes through. Both versions, actually, the wrestling version and this pop version. But enough of that gushy mushiness. Let's talk about some TV dads. Steve, give us your first pick on your Mount Rushmore of TV dads.
Okay, I'm going to start with one of my all-time favorites, TV dads. And I guess if you can, if there's any word that can describe what this dad is all about, it would have to be "no." Oh. I am of course talking about Homer Simpson, one of the probably longest tenured dads on TV. I mean, the Simpsons have been around for over 30 years, and Homer is just one of the most unique characters that has ever come down the pike in terms of cartoons. He's a dimwit. He's a simpleton sometimes. He's lazy. He's he's at a job where he could literally destroy Springfield at the one chance he gets. However, as we see throughout the years, when it comes time to be a husband and to be a dad, he can pass with flying colors. He does some great stuff for the kid, for Bart, for Lisa, and for Maggie. He's just so. He's what you want in a good dad when he doesn't even mean to be a good dad at times. So when it comes down to brass tacks, I think Homer Simpson is definitely up there as one of the greatest TV dads of all time.
Mm-hmm. All right, Greg, it was one of your picks as well.
Yes, it was. So yeah, Homer Simpson is definitely my first pick as in the Mount Rushmore for TV dads. What can you say? I mean, 30 years for Homer Simpson. That is an incredible run for any TV show, and we all love him. Misadventures and all. Who could ever forget when he jumped the Springfield Gorge?
Yes, that episode. Now he was so when I talked about by proxy earlier, Sean Kidd and Scott Shiflett both wanted to be on the show, but they had a prior commitment, so they gave me lists. So I'm going to read them off. And Homer Simpson was an honorable mention by Sean. But one thing I wanted to just talk about for while we're on the Homer Simpson subject, what do you guys think when the focus of the Simpsons got away from Bart and really focused on Homer? Really, he became the central character. What do you guys think that meant for the series? If it had stayed on Bart as like the main focus, do you think it would still be around today?
I think it probably would have been canceled by like season 13 or 14. But I mean, the fact that it switched to Homer like mid-season, I mean, not mid-season, like mid-90s or whatever, like season 5, season 6, that really has improved the show's quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steve, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about it a bit back on the cartoons episode. I think we talked about the same discussion, but I definitely agree. I think when the focus switched off of Bart to Homer, I think it helped increase the show's longevity. And honestly, I mean, it's not just Homer. I think the whole family's been kind of getting spotlighted as opposed to just Bart or Homer. So, but I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, any thoughts to share on Homer Simpson?
Yeah, I think it's almost a necessity in an animated show where the kids don't grow up. I mean, South Park did the same thing by shifting the focus to Randy Marsh, and I think it expanded their life and made that a better show too. Because the kids at the same age can only do certain things, and they kind of run out of ideas. So I think it was a smart decision to shift the focus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it would be like the Flintstones focusing on Pebbles and Bam Bam, although they had their own show later, but in the Jetsons focusing on Elroy. Yeah, there's so much more to go with the older characters. All right, Greg, why don't you give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, my next entry on my Mount Rushmore is, well, you got to give credit to this guy. He was a single widowed dad trying to raise 3 of his daughters in San Francisco with the help of his brother-in-law and his best friend. I'm talking about Danny Tanner.
Yes, great pick. Very fun show. Steve, it was on your list as well.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not talk about Danny Tanner as one of the best dads on TV? I mean, Full House was just such a staple of the late 80s and the early 90s, and then of course with the recent Fuller House, and Bob Saget has played that character to perfection. So definitely more than deserving to being on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, it was actually on Scott Shiflett's list as well. But what's funny about I always crack about Danny Tanner that he could not be any further than away from who Bob Saget is.
No.
I remember seeing Bob Saget stand up for the first time. Like, oh my God, that's Danny Tanner. That's the guy who hosts America's Favorite Home Videos and stuff like that. Like funniest home videos.
Oh yeah, it was shocking to me. For me, when the scene in Half Baked, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Or when he was on Entourage. I don't know if you remember that appearance.
Yeah.
Or it's on there. Yeah. It's just quite the oh wow, that is one of the best TV dads or most loved TV dads out there. This guy, Jesus. But no, Danny Tanner was a great. I mean, yeah, he was kind of the glue of the show because you had the antics of the daughters, you had the Joey Jesse, kind of friendship there going on, and he was kind of like the center and kind of kept everybody grounded. So good pick, guys. Calvin, why don't you give us your first entry?
My first pick is Carl Winslow from Family Matters. I picked him because he wasn't only a great dad to his kids, but he despised Steve Urkel, and he was still a good father figure to him.
Yeah. Yes, very good. Actually, Carl Winslow made a lot of lists. He made Greg's as well. Greg, yes. Carl Winslow.
Oh yeah, Carl. He was the working class dad in Chicago, helping out his family, but also, who couldn't blame him for getting annoyed by the antics of one Steve Urkel?
Yeah, no. Steve, he was on your list as well.
Yeah, I agree with what the guy said. I mean, Family Matters is another show that was such a staple of the early 90s. And, Carl, going through life as a police officer, dealing with his own family, and then, of course, dealing with Urkel's antics made for such good time. So that's a great pick.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'll read off Sean's list for now. So Sean went with Al Bundy. Much as cranky as he was, that crap job of his as the shoe salesman, how much he complained about them. At the end of the day, he did what he had to do for his family. I mean, Kelly and Bud, he supported them. He was there for them when they really needed to. And Al Bundy, believe it or not, deserves a place on this list. Greg, any thoughts on Al Bundy? I heard you kind of give it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he wasn't made my list, but Al Bundy. We talk about Al Bundy occasionally on my podcast because Mike is a big Married with Children fan, so he adores Al Bundy, one of his all-time favorite television characters, and yeah, I cannot blame anyone for putting Al Bundy on the list of the greatest TV dads of all time.
Yeah. Calvin, any thoughts on Al Bundy?
Yeah, he's basically the non-animated Homer Simpson. I mean, they're pretty much the same character.
Yep, kind of. I would see that there. Yep. Steve?
Yeah, the guys pretty much said everything needs to be said about Al Bundy. Definitely a good pick.
All right. Now, given one of Scott's picks, Scott went with Sandy Cohen from the OC. I've never seen an episode of the OC, so I don't know if any of you guys have, so you kind of have to help me out there. Any of you guys familiar with the OC?
Nope. He's got great eyebrows. It's Peter Gallagher, and his eyebrows are terrific. But outside of that, I don't know him as a dad. I mean, hopefully he gave them grooming tips on how to make their eyebrows that well.
There you go. All right. Well, actually, Steve, we're going to finish off your list since you had a few crossovers. So what's your final pick on your list proper?
For my final one, it's a show that I didn't watch a ton, but I know a lot of people consider this guy one of the best dads out there, and that is, of course, Philip Banks, a.k.a. Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Obviously, he and Vivian have their own kids, and then, of course, Will is brought in to live with them, and over the seasons, we see Will kind of become their son by proxy. And of course, I think a lot of people will really remember the episode where Will's real dad comes to visit him, and the confrontation at the end there, where Uncle Phil kind of is like, it's like you're gonna walk out on him again, and Will's father does, and Will kind of finally breaks down, and the emotional scene where Uncle Phil embraces him. So definitely. When you talk TV dads, I think Uncle Phil definitely belongs up there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he made Sean and Scott's list. Now, I've seen not a ton of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but I could definitely see where that relationship is. And I mean, he was a tremendous actor. Greg, any thoughts on Uncle Phil?
Oh, Uncle Phil. What more can you say? What a great character. And James Avery. Because I don't think a lot of you people know this, but he was also the voice of Shredder on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was also one of the guys that roughs Fletch up at the beginning of the movie. Him and the great Tony Dow, a.k.a. I think he was Mad Dog on First and 10. So, yeah, he was also one of his great roles was he was the DMV tester.
And License to Drive.
License to Drive. He's like, you spill my coffee, you fail. I honestly, my first driver's test, the guy got in the car. He looked like him, and I almost shit my pants.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Needless to say, I didn't do well on that one. I also had just started learning how to drive, and I took it in the Bronx, so it was a very busy day on the roads for this road test. So yeah, I had my own Les Anderson moment there. All right, Calvin, you have anything to share on Uncle Phil before we move on?
I haven't seen a lot of Fresh Prince, but anyone who steps in as a surrogate kind of dad gets extra points, so it's a good pick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Greg, let's finish off your list.
Well, I'm gonna have to go with one of the OG TV dads of all time. I'm gonna go with Ward Cleaver, played by Hugh Beaumont on Leave It to Beaver. Now, this guy Ward Cleaver. Obviously, Leave It to Beaver before my time, but he provided the moral center of Leave It to Beaver. He would always try to put some words of wisdom to the Beaver and Wally at the end of the episode to make sure that they learned something at the end of the episode.
Yes, I remember watching it on I don't know if it was like Nick at Night and back when it was first on. Yeah, just anybody that could put up with Jerry Mather's cadence of how he talked and could still deliver life lessons is okay in my book. But no, solid. Calvin, any thoughts on Leave It to Beaver? Ward, actually, more specifically.
Yeah, that's a great pick. One of the first really good examples of a TV dad, I would say.
Yeah, probably one of the first standout TV dads, actually. Believe it or not, Sean did not have it on his list or an honorable mention, so just have to nip that. But Steve, any thoughts on Ward Cleaver?
I think the guys pretty much said it best. That's definitely a good old school pick.
Mm-hmm. All right. Calvin, why don't you give us another entry on your list?
To me, a good dad is someone who covers up their own flaws and helps their children succeed in spite of it. And the quintessential example of that for me is Tony Soprano.
There you go.
Ooh.
All right. You want to expound on that, or?
I mean, he was running a mob empire, but he got his kids through school. He got medal through college, and he led them up to success. And he didn't want them to take the path that he took because he knew it probably wasn't best for long-term success.
Mm-hmm. All right. Greg, any thoughts on this Tony Soprano?
Yeah, well, Tony Soprano, mobster, but you know what? He did love his family. I got to give him that.
He never stopped believing. Steve, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, that's another good pick. So it's not, I haven't seen a ton of The Sopranos, but that's definitely interesting. That is a good pick there. That's one I never would have really thought of.
Yeah. No, I think it's solid. I mean, at the end of the day, again, like kind of like how Homer Simpson is bumbling and how Al Bundy is just cranky and miserable. Tony Soprano, is a mob boss. He's the head of the family, but at the end of the day, the family that really matters are the ones that came from him as his kids. So yeah, I could definitely see that. That's a solid pick. Sean, another pick on Sean's is Howard Cunningham, aka Mr. C.
Oh,
and I'm come on, I tear up every time I see the finale of Happy Days when he gives that toast and he looks right at the camera and said, "Thank you, B, for being part of our family." I mean, yeah, he was tough but fair on Richie and also Potsy and Ralph, and he had the respect of the Fonz and the Water Buffaloes and all that stuff. Yeah, Mr. C, aka Howard Cunningham, tremendous. Greg, of course, being a big TV guy, I heard you audibly, why did I think of that?
I was this close from putting Mr. C on my list.
Yeah. Oh, tremendous. Calvin, any thoughts on Mr. Cunningham?
Couldn't make my list. He had a kid disappear and never even questioned it. That would be like putting Madeline McCann's dad on my list of real life Rushmore dads.
Oh, jeez.
All right, Steve.
No, that's a good pick. I had a couple of older dads on my in my honorable mentions, but he just missed the cut.
Okay. So Scott's final pick is Eric Taylor from Friday Night Lights. Again, another show I didn't really watch. I mean, this is one of Scott's favorite shows. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that or agree with that. That's Coach Taylor. That's
Kyle Chandler.
Kyle Chandler, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen bits of the first season. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that pick.
All right.
That's a great show, but he cared more about his football players than his own daughter.
Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't put him on my list.
But he's like a surrogate dad to the football players.
Yeah, but you can't be a better surrogate dad than a real dad.
I don't know. Well, was Uncle Phil a better dad to Will or to his three kids?
I think he was a better dad to Carlton than anybody.
Yeah. All right. So Calvin, you and Sean have people left on your list. So give us Another one of yours.
One that I can't believe hasn't been mentioned yet. Mike Seaver from Growing Pains. The quintessential dad for me. Like, he was my best example, I think. I think he was a great TV dad. He was the guy that I wish was my dad when I watched that show.
Yeah, Jason Seaver, actually. I think you mixed your two last picks.
Yes, Jason Seaver, yeah.
Yeah, he was an honorable mention of Steve's.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the, he was definitely a good dad. Alan Thicke did a good job playing him.
And he had a damn hot wife, too. Oh, Maggie, Joanna Kearns, right?
Joanna Kearns,
Kearns, yeah.
Maggie Seaver, Hachi Machi. Greg, any thoughts on Jason Seaver?
Oh, well, I adore Alan Thicke. God rest his soul. Just think, Alan Thicke went from Thick of the Night, which was his attempt at dethroning Johnny Carson, to this. And it was just amazing. It was just an amazing role as Jason Seaver. And I just absolutely loved Growing Pains as a kid. Just absolutely loved it.
Oh, yeah. Growing Pains was one of my favorites also as well. Okay, so actually, you know what? Your last one and Sean's last one are the same, Calvin, so I'll let you do the honor.
All right. To me, it would be hard to balance being a step parent with being a real parent and not trying to favor your kids over your stepkids. And the guy who did that best was Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely on in heavy rotation back when it was on TV and in reruns. And the fact that, you had to mix, your three sons with your new wife's three daughters and be the captain of the household, basically. Yeah, Mike Brady did a tremendous job. Steve, he was an honorable mention of yours.
Yeah, well, you definitely think great TV dads, he's got to be up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Greg, any thoughts on Mike Brady?
Oh, well, it's Mike Brady. I mean, what else more can be said about it?
Yeah.
I mean, he went from he had three of his own boys, and then he goes and remarries, and now he's got three stepdaughters. So now he's got to raise all these kids and try to help straighten them out with his wife Carol, and it's just absolutely incredible. And of course, you also got Alice as the wild card in that show.
Yeah, and all the kids happen to be the same ages.
Oh yeah, what a coincidence.
Yeah. You had those Marsha and Greg, things going on there. No, but yeah, it was fun. And I loved when he, they parried it a lot later on. They had what was that movie, that TV show with Day by Day, I think it was, right?
Step by Step?
Step by Step.
Was it Step by Step? That was the one where they had like the daycare or something like that, right? And they did the Brady episode. And the kid on that show went on to play Greg Brady in the Brady Bunch movie.
Oh, no, that's different. But Step by Step was like a 90s version of
with
the Brady
Patrick
Bunch.
Duffy and Susan
Summers.
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 Yeah.
No, but I think it was called Day by Day.
I'm not familiar with that.
Don't worry, we'll eventually cover it.
Yeah, I was going to say that if it hasn't been on It Was a Thing on TV, it will be. So.
Oh, don't worry, it will be one day.
I think it lasted 1 or 2 seasons, but they did a very funny episode where he I think he fell asleep or something like that, and he woke up. He was in the Brady Bunch, and he the kid is like, I think Mike Brady says, "Son, I told you to." He goes, "Dad, I got my haircut." He goes, "No, I told you to get a perm. All the men in this family have a perm." So yes, it's a very funny things that stick out in my brain are very weird. All right, Steve, why don't you give us some of your honorable mentions?
Okay, well, the first one, he was mentioned briefly earlier, and that's Randy Marsh from South Park. Definitely similar to Homer. He's very bumbling and aloof, probably even more so than Homer, just because of some of the stuff he does on the show. But again, he's definitely proven himself to be a good dad to Stan, even though he gets into some really crazy ideas throughout the series, from being like a chef to the most recent years with his whole pandemic specials and all that stuff. So I think he definitely merited a mention.
Okay. Greg, do you have any honorable mentions?
Well, I think I already mentioned that Mr. Cunningham was close to my list. If I had to pick an honorable mention, it would probably be Mr. C. So,
Calvin, do you have any?
Yeah, I only have two that haven't already been mentioned. One is Jim Anderson from Fathers Knows Best, and I figured Sean was going to put him on his list because that's a quintessential young Sean show. And
right.
my other one is the forefather of these bad dads who at the end are just all about their family, like Homer and Randy Marsh, and that's Archie Bunker from All in the Family.
Mm-hmm. All right.
He was the forefather of that model of dad on TV.
Yeah, it was also Steve's. Steve's honorable mention. Steve, do you have any more that we didn't mention?
Yeah, I have two more. Another kind of the same vein as Homer and Randy, and ironically, he's another cartoon character. That's Peter Griffin from Family Guy. He's definitely up there. And then the last one I have, another kind of older dad, really kind of set a good example for his family. That's Fred Sanford from Sanford and Son.
Hey.
By Red Fox played the character, and very memorable character for that show back in the 70s. So those were some of mine.
Yeah, him and Lamont. Yeah, it was what a great relationship the two of them had on that show. Just get through all of Fred Sanford's gruffness and his joking. He really did. Him and his son had such a great relationship. You mentioned Peter Griffin. My 14-year-old son right now is obsessed with Family Guy. That's all I hear on. I'm still working from home, and I'm like one room over with a little hallway in between us, and I'm trying to work, and all I hear is Family Guy when he's like done with school, and I'm just like, oh my God, like part of me like doesn't want to admit I want to like go in and watch with him. But because I used to watch Family Guy back in the day, I kind of fallen out of it. But it's still hysterical to me because I think I'm around the same age as Seth MacFarlane, so a lot of his stuff is like stuff that I could recognize and relate to, which is hysterical. So Sean had a few honorable mentions. Scott didn't have any, but that we didn't mention Stephen Keaton from Family Ties. Another great TV dad. He had Dan Connor from Roseanne. Who was really the heart and soul of that show, really.
And Steve Keaton is a very interesting one for now with the political strife that's going on, in families. That's a good example of how to handle maybe not agreeing with your kids, but still supporting them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then also he had Andy Griffith. So there you go, Calvin.
That's more like the list I was expecting Sean to have. I didn't think any dads who appeared in color were going to be on Sean's list.
And also he had Tim Taylor.
Oh?
Yeah, great. Oh yeah, I that show. What was great about that show was he was a great dad, but also that his wife didn't take any of his crap and just kept toe to toe with them. So, yeah. Oh, no. Great list. Great job, guys. Great first half of the show. So that was our Mount Rushmores of TV dads. But when we come back, we're going to have our Mount Rushmores of movie dads. Those dads on the big screen that you love to watch and just make everything better, so to speak. With Steve Riddle, Greg Diener, Calvin Crowell, and me, Andy Atherton, making Mount Rushmore. We'll be right back.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Got your hand to the side and said I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me, saying get back together, come back and see me. 3 days since the living room. I realized it's all my fault, but couldn't tell you. Yesterday you'd forgiven me, but it'll still be 2 days till I say I'm sorry. Hold it now, I want to hoodwink. Does it make you stop think?
All right, PlayStation Pop Experience making Mount Rushmore has returned. We're talking about dads on this episode, our Father's Day edition. We talked about our favorite, our Mount Rushmore of TV dads. Now we're going to do our Mount Rushmore of movie dads with Steve Riddle, Greg Diener, and Calvin Crowell, and me, Andy Atherton, acting as proxy for Sean Kidd and Scott Shiflett. We're going to get our our movie dads underway, and we're going to start with Calvin this time. Calvin, who is the first entry on your list for best movie dads?
The first person I thought of right away was Daniel Hillard, Robin Williams from Mrs. Doubtfire. The fact that he changed gender, basically, to cross-dress just to still be around his kids. I mean, it shows you how much he cared for them, and even though he was a mess, he loved those kids and he wanted to do whatever he could to see them still.
Yeah, he was a mess. I mean, but he really got his shit together through being Mrs. Doubtfire also. But you saw how he was when he first gets divorced and how messy the apartment was and everything. And then, in order to keep up the illusion of Mrs. Doubtfire, he had to learn how to cook, had to learn how to clean and become.
He tried to poison James Bond. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that.
Oh yeah, he did.
Oh, sir, you see it? It was run by fruiting. The terroristic bastard went that way. Angry member of the kitchen staff. Did you not tip him well? Oh, I love that movie. Hello! Again, another movie on my Laughing Theater wish list. Steve, you had it as an honorable mention of yours.
Yeah, this is a good pick. Robert Williams kills it as Daniel / Mrs. Doubtfire, and this was like really when he was starting to catch fire in the 90s. So great pick.
Oh yeah, this was peak Robin Williams, I think, in this period of time. Between this, The Birdcage, Aladdin, Good Morning Vietnam, he just wasn't. Good Morning Vietnam was 80s, I think, but yeah, he wasn't doing any wrong. Any thoughts to share, Greg, on Daniel Hillard?
Oh yeah, well he already made my list, but I gotta say, as you mentioned, Andy, this period Robin Williams was just on absolute fire with all his roles, and I remember watching this in the theater when I was like 9 years old and loving every scene in that movie. Just it is like a absolute clinic, and I think it was recently reported like they have so much material that Robin Williams improvised during Mrs. Doubtfire that they actually said that they had like an NC-17 cut of Mrs. Doubtfire, and I really would like to see that.
Yeah, so Mrs. Doubtfire probably swearing like a sailor and some of the things that would come out of that crazy man's head. Oh yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think there are people that do that. They recut trailers of movies to like a different genre, and I think there's somebody out there. It might be on YouTube that somebody did a horror movie version of Mrs. Doubtfire, which you can definitely see if you edit it correctly and with the right music and like they did that with Sleepless in Seattle. They did The Shining as a romantic comedy or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely out there. And Mrs. Doubtfire, great pick. Daniel Hillard. Yeah, the guy, begs and pleads the judge, and then finally, it has such a nice happy ending. How him and Sally Field, Miranda, they don't love each other anymore, and they're not going to be married anymore, but they learn how to coexist for the betterment of the kids. So good pick. All right, Greg, give us your first pick on your Mount Rushmore.
Okay, my first pick from my Mount Rushmore is an animated character. I'm gonna go with as portrayed in the movie Finding Nemo by Albert Brooks. I'm going with Marlin.
Oh yeah, very good pick.
Great pick.
Yeah. It really carries the movie with having to balance with the zany antics of Dory. Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's very underrated. Also, voice performance by Albert Brooks, I think.
Oh yeah, Albert Brooks is. I gotta say, first season of The Simpsons, some of the characters Albert Brooks portrays on that show are just absolutely great performances by him, and this is no exception. Finding Nemo.
Yeah, Steve, he was an honorable mention of yours.
Yeah, I had another animated character on my main four, but yeah, Marlin's definitely a good pick. He's so after he loses his wife, he becomes so overprotective of Nemo, and it takes losing him and forming this relationship with Dory that he ends up finally coming out of his shell and becoming a more braver fish. So yeah, that's definitely a good pick.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, any thoughts this year?
Yeah, that's a great pick. Excellent pick, and probably the second best animated dad that I can think of in a movie.
All right. Steve, why don't you give us one of your picks?
All right, I'm going with the guy who is probably the most resilient and the word just escaped me, but persistent father probably in movie history, and that is of course Clark W. Griswold Jr. from the Vacation series. Just everything we've seen in those movies, from wanting to take his family to Wally World, to take him to Europe and to Vegas, and even as far as trying to have the perfect Christmas with them, Clark just wants to have a great relationship with his wife and his kids. And he, gets into so many shenanigans along the way, but at the end of the day, things always work out in the end for him. And of course, I don't think anyone could have made that character any better than Chevy Chase. So I think when you think of movie dads, Clark Griswold definitely has to be on there.
Mm-hmm. Greg, you made your list as well.
Yes, the Vacation movies, what can I say? Some of the all-time great movies. And I love how persistent that Clark is in wanting to get to Wally World. And when they finally get there, they find out, oh, the park's closed for 2 weeks. But Clark could have just gone home, but no, he decides he's going to go to the local sporting goods store and get a BB gun and threaten John Candy with it, and they're going to have a fun time at Wally World.
Sorry, folks, park's closed. Moose out front should have told you. Yes, yeah, he just the faces he makes and just how crazy he gets. The original Vacation is on my wish list for Laugh at Theater, but I did Christmas Vacation. Actually, was the first time I watched it end to end, and Clark, is just insane with how he wants the perfect lights, the perfect meal, everything. Yeah, and he just tries his best, and things don't always go right, but they always work out in the end. And Sean and Scott both had Clark Griswold on their list. So I'm going to go with one of Sean's picks, and that is The Old Man from A Christmas Story.
Oh, Darren McGavin.
Darren McGavin. I definitely endorse this pick because, again, this was my other Christmas episode of Laugh in Theater group watch, and The Old Man, the mom is the sweetest thing, and this guy is just ridiculous. But at the end, he gets Ralphie the present he really wants, and of course, Ralphie almost shoots his eye out with it, but still, it's like his dad had one, for all his blustering and his ridiculousness with the furnace and with the fuse and the award and all that stuff. Yeah, he at the end of the day, he was a really, really good dad. Calvin, any thoughts on The Old Man?
My mom and my grandmother are Jehovah's Witnesses, so Christmas was never a thing in my house, so I've never seen this movie.
Oh, Calvin. Mm-hmm. Oh, you gotta watch that one day. Greg, any thoughts?
On the Old Man? Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Who could ever forget Fragile?
Yes, that must be Italian. Steve?
That's a good pick. I never would have thought about that.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to give one of Scott's picks. Staying with Christmas, he went with Scott Calvin from Santa Claus, which, again, good pick. I love the Santa Claus. We had mentioned off air, I think we mentioned The Scout, where we were just chit-chatting on the first show. And this was a show I had done a review of in college. I did actually a review of the Santa Claus for my college paper. He has to balance being Santa Claus and being a dad to Charlie at the same time. And he does a great job of it. So let's turn around to anybody have thoughts on Scott Calvin before we move on?
Well, I gotta appreciate any dad that takes his kid to Denny's on Christmas Eve.
There you go. All right, Calvin, give us another entry on your list.
I think a main goal of a dad is to shield your son or your daughter from anything bad going on in the world. And Guido Orfis from Life is Beautiful is a quintessential example of that. He made the Holocaust heartwarming in ways. To shield your son from what's actually going on in the concentration camp and making it into a game. Brilliant performance and just a great movie dad.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen Life is Beautiful all the way through. I think I've seen bits and pieces of it. But Greg, Steve, any thoughts on that pick?
Not a bad pick.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Greg, give us another entry on your list.
Well, any dad has to teach their son or daughter the birds and the bees as they grow older. And I feel like this movie dad is the perfect dad for those awkward moments with your kid. And I went with Jim's dad from American Pie, played by Eugene Levy.
Yes, Mr. Levinstein. Oh, very good. I mean, it's perfectly natural pick to do. I mean, yeah, he's just there to pick up to support Jim, and no matter what happens to Jim, I mean, come on, with the pie incident.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, well, just tell your mom we ate it. You know, in the second one when Jim glues himself to himself, and he takes her to the hospital, and after that great scene of he comes in and he's like, oh, there's a young lady is coming, and then what if my son, and then the doctor has this miraculous cream that will cut his time in half, his healing time in half. He goes, all right, son, don't forget your penis cream. I mean, the third one, he brings him his ring to the American wedding. He brings him his ring while, Michelle is, under the table, so to speak, at the restaurant right before Jim proposes. Yeah. And then he, of course, he hooks up with Stifler's mom in the fourth, in the American reunion. Yeah, I love it. And Eugene Levy, great performance as him, portrayal. And it's so funny is that my best friend kind of talks like that. So it's like hanging out with Jim's dad. Calvin, he made your list as well.
Yeah, he made my list simply because, like you guys mentioned, he's so ride or die for Jim. I mean, to not sell Jim out to his mom for what he did to the pie is just great. I mean, who wouldn't want a dad that backs you up that much? And that's why he made my list.
Yeah, I don't think I'd even I'd want to bury it in the backyard, the pie.
Oh,
I think that's what I would do with it.
Or find a dumpster nearby and just throw it in there.
Yeah. Steve, any thoughts on Jim's dad?
Just missed the cut for me, but yeah, that's definitely a good pick. He's definitely a funny dad, and Eugene Levy does a great job as him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfectly natural pick. Steve, give us another one of your selections.
Okay, I'm going with probably the greatest animated movie dad of all time, and that's of course Mufasa from The Lion King.
Say it again.
Mufasa.
Oh, got chills. Say it again one more time.
Mufasa. Oh God. Yeah, but yeah, Mufasa, who's rules the Pride Lands, and he and Sarabi get birth to Simba, and he's he wants to show his son, he wants to prep his son to be king, and he is strict and firm with him, but they always like to have fun and mess around. And I defy anyone to say that there is not a sadder moment in Disney history when Mufasa is killed by Scar in the Stampede. I mean, It's just one of the most heartbreaking moments in cinematic history. So I think Mufasa definitely belongs up there as one of the greatest movie dads of all time.
Yeah, it makes the Bambi's mom thing even nothing. Nothing compares to that. Because, man, Bambi didn't witness it. I mean, the fact that it's so, oh my God, it's so heartbreaking because, Scar reveals himself, that what he's about to do, and just watching him go down, and there's Simba there, and then Simba goes and tries to lie with him and wake him up. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Greg, any thoughts on that, on Mufasa?
Yeah, this is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in movie history right there. As you said, right up there with Bambi's mother dying.
Yeah, and actually Pearl, as we talked about earlier with Marlin as well. Calvin, anything on Mufasa?
Yeah, I think he's the greatest animated dad, and I think the only moment that compares, it's not Disney, but is Littlefoot's mother dying in Land Before Time. I think that's the only thing that comes close as far as animated movie moments that are heartbreaking like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree with that one.
And Scott had it on his list as well. Yeah, it's a great pick. I mean, and such a, again, we talked about this with Mark. I mean, this is perfect. I mean, you couldn't cast anything any better than James Earl Jones as the voice of Mufasa, and the fact that they cast Matt Sinclair as Sarabi, who played his wife in Coming to America. So that's just great, tremendous. All right, so I'm going to give another one of Sean's picks. Actually, I don't necessarily agree with this one, but Jack Burns from Meet the Parents, played by Robert De Niro. Yeah, I think he was really, really hard on Greg. I mean, I think he was doing it for a reason, but I am not the biggest fan of the Meet the Parents series, so I'm just going to leave it there. You guys have any thoughts on Jack Burns?
No? It's what everyone tells you that your girlfriend's dad's going to act like, but you never actually really encounter it until this movie. Like, everyone always tells you, oh, your girlfriend's dad's going to be there with a shotgun and he's going to give you a lie detector test, but you never actually see it in real life, and then they brought it to life in this movie.
Yeah. Steve, Greg, any thoughts?
Meet the Parents. I was a big fan of the first movie, and he has a lie detector scene. I think is like one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, in my opinion. It's just great the way him and Ben Stiller react to each other, and of course, recently they actually made a reference to that on a couple years ago on Saturday Night Live when Robert De Niro played Robert Mueller and Ben Stiller played Michael Cohen. So
yeah. All right. All right. So, I'm going to confess this is on my shame list because I've never seen these movies, any of them. But Scott's final pick was Brian Mills from Taken.
Yes.
It's, again, on my shame list in terms of movies. It's up there with the John. I've seen the first John Wick. I've seen those, but those are there's some movies that have just escaped me for one reason or another, and the Taken movies have. Also, but Steve, it was one of your honorable mentions, so I'll hand it to you to talk.
Yeah, I love the Taken trilogy. I think Brian Mills, another dad that'll go to any great lengths to save his family, particularly his daughter in the first one, and then his ex-wife in the second one, and then eventually the third one. He's framed for his ex-wife's murder, and he has to use his each film he has to use his particular set of skills to get himself out of trouble and to find to save the day. And definitely perfect casting with Liam Neeson. He just is an absolute badass in that series. So that's definitely a great pick.
Yeah, and actually he was a honorable mention of Sean, so I want to add that one. All right, so Calvin, why don't you finish up your list?
My last pick is Ted Kramer, Dustin Hoffman, and Kramer versus Kramer, because it shows how much he would fight for his kid. And back then, I think it was just guaranteed that the mother would get custody and they would favor the mother. And he really fought against that. And he's a great dad to his son, and he makes it work despite the differences.
Yeah, that kid's a little brat, too, for half that movie.
Oh, awful. The kid is awful.
Yeah. You guys have a thought on Ted Kramer?
I've never seen the movie, so
I've only seen it once, and it was a while ago, so can't really remark. But he did win an Oscar for that performance.
Oh, terrific! Him and Meryl Streep in that movie are both brilliant.
Yeah, I believe they both won, didn't they?
Yes, they both won.
Yeah, they did, and it won Best Picture.
Yeah, yep. It was on the. I have a box set. I think it's 11 movies of all the Best Picture winners that Columbia Pictures put out. Highly recommend that set. Gandhi's in there. It Happened One Night. What's that other one? The Kingfish one. Huey Long story. That one's in there too. Yeah. The original, not the remake. All the King's Men, I think it's called.
Yeah. All the King's Men.
Yeah. Awesome film. All right. So, Greg, why don't you finish off your list?
All right. For my last pick, I'm going to go with Henry Jones Sr. from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, portrayed by the late, great Sean Connery.
Yes, very, very good pick.
Mm-hmm.
He just he's there, and really because of him is how they get through it. All the challenges, because he really just speaks to his son and all the teachings and everything he taught him. So yeah, I think it's a tremendous pick. Steve, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, good pick. Definitely very good choice. Sean Connery does a great job as Henry Sr. and kind of playing off Harrison Ford as Indiana. So good pick.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, any thoughts on Henry Jones Sr.?
I've never seen Indiana Jones. That's on my shame list.
Oof. All right. Well, after you see those movies, Calvin, you have to go and listen to the Blockbuster Rewind episode we did on the Indiana Jones films with our good friend Tech. Yes, I'm just.
Can I please skip Shia LaBeouf's movie though?
No.
Well, so just yeah.
Nah, I mean it's.
Oh, I enjoyed some of the 50s B movie.
Yeah, I did like some of that. You know, I mean, it was when I rewatched it for Blockbuster Rewind, I actually liked it a little bit more than I mean, I didn't crap on it as much as I did from when I originally saw it. But yeah, it's a little ridiculous.
It is a little ridiculous, but I think kind of like the passage of time has kind of helped it a little bit.
Yeah, I think people have softened on it, and the fact that you know, for those of us who live in Connecticut, you know, that fact it was shot on location in New Haven, you know, it has a special place in our guest on that episode, our good friend Tech, his heart. All right, so Steve, why don't you give us another one of your entries?
All right, my next one is maybe a little outside the box, but I think he's been a really good dad these last couple of years, and that's Scott Lang from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of course, Ant-Man.
Oh.
He, you know, he's a guy. He's obviously, you know, a criminal, you know, former criminal, and he's, you know, has a strange, you know, obviously a strange relationship with his ex-wife, but he loves his daughter a lot, and he wants to try to provide a better life for her. And as we see in the first one, he ends up saving her in the end from the Yellow Jacket, and then they continue to get closer. And the second one, to the point that she covers for him repeatedly, so he can go out and do, you know, take care of things by putting his ankle bracelet on a giant sized ant. So, and then of course that emotional scene in Endgame where after he gets out of the quantum realm 5 years after the blip, and he finds his daughter as a teenager, and they have their little heartfelt reunion, was really a cool thing. And obviously, we'll wait to see what happens in the third film, how the relationship continues to grow. But yeah, I think considering you don't see a lot of dads in the MCU, I think Scott Lang's definitely one of the best ones.
Mm-hmm. All right, Calvin, any thoughts on that?
Great pick. I love Ant-Man's probably actually my favorite Marvel movie because I just am a stan for Paul Rudd, but that's an excellent pick.
Mm-hmm. Greg?
Well, I actually said this to Justin and Scott when I was on the Place to Be podcast, but I actually consider Ant-Man like one of my top MCU movies. So the first Ant-Man, I think that's a very underrated film in the MCU franchise. And I think what makes that movie work is the father-daughter dynamic between him and Cassie, and also the father-daughter dynamic between Hank Pym and Hope. I think both of those work very well together because you have Hank and Scott, and they're both basically like in the same situation with their daughter in the movie, and it's just they have to work together to, you know, solve this problem that Hank has, and it's a very well put together movie.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I highly agree. I think the beauty of the MCU is that, you know, there are all these different heroes, all these different movies, and they're superhero movies, but they're actually under different genres. And the fact that it's like a family heist type movie where, you know, and just the way they all play off each other. And honestly, Hank Pym could have made somebody's list on this show. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely an honorable mention, I think. So I'm going to move back to Sean's list, and his final pick was Harry Stamper from Armageddon. Solid pick, I think. You know, looks out for his little girl. You know, doesn't gives AJ quite the hard time, and then makes the ultimate sacrifice so that she and everybody else can live. So I think solid pick. Calvin, any thoughts on Harry Stamper?
That's a great pick. He was close to making my list.
Yeah, surprisingly, Sean had movies that were in color on his list, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's an honorable mention pick that I'm going to mention later, who I literally left off only because I didn't want to limit Sean's options of black and white dads.
Even when he's not on the show. All right, Greg, any thoughts on Harry Stamper?
What more needs to be said? Oh yeah, who doesn't get a tear in their eye when he makes that sacrifice? And
Yep. Take care of my little girl. Tell it yourself. And he, throws her in there. Yeah. And you have Ben Affleck. I love you. Steve, anything to share?
No, that's a good pick. Bruce Willis kills it as Harry.
All right. So Steve, you are the only one that has somebody left to go on their list. So why don't you give it to us?
All right, I'm going really old school on this one, and we make fun of Sean Kidd and all his picks, but he actually might be very surprised to see that I had this one on my list, and that's Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. He has his two kids, Jim and Scout, and he ends up is appointed to defend a man who's accused of raping a white woman. The man is a black man, and he gets ostracized by the town because he's defending him properly, like he should. And his kids are also kind of ridiculed for it, and to the point that his kids are attacked by one of the townspeople, and they end up getting saved by the mysterious Boo Radley. But I think when you talk about really good dads who try to set the right example for their kids, I think Atticus Finch definitely belongs as one of those great dads.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've seen a ton of classic movies, and this is not one of them. So I am not, and I've never read the book, so I am not familiar. So I'm going to take your word for it. Calvin, I know you're a big reader. What do you say about this?
That was the dad I was referencing, leaving off my list because I didn't want to limit Sean Kidd's black and white options. But Gregory Peck is phenomenal in this movie. It's a great pick, and he was very close to making my list. And it's an awesome movie, and it's an even better book.
Yeah. Greg, any thoughts on Atticus Finch?
Well, I haven't seen the movie or read the book, but I gotta respect the Gregory Peck, one of the all-time great actors of all time, and shares my name, so I gotta respect that.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's go through honorable mentions. Calvin, you have any?
Yeah, I only have two that weren't mentioned. Jimmy Markham, Sean Penn from Mystic River.
Okay.
The way he goes on revenge the death of his daughter. And then the other one I left off because I wasn't sure if we were allowed to put portrayals of real people was Chris Gardner, Will Smith as Chris Gardner in Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Greg, any honorable mentions?
Well, I'll go with Scott Lang from Ant-Man. We've already talked about him. But I'll go with one dad we haven't mentioned. George McFly from Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good pick. I'm not really good at confrontations. But he's Daddy-O. Yeah, I think it's a good pick. I mean, he tries to help his kid in the beginning of the movie, and he just can't because he's just this whimpering mess. And then everything changes, and he just takes care of him. Yeah. I mean, he takes care of his family. He does what he has to do. Puts up with Biff's bullshit as a result. So
yeah. Thank heavens for Darth Vader from Planet Vulcan.
Yes. Steve, any honorable mentions we haven't mentioned?
Well, I had Chris Gardner as well, so that's a good pick. Another dad that's played by Robin Williams, Peter Banning from Hook.
Yes.
Of course, he was the former Peter Pan that ended up returning back to Earth and grew up and had kids of his own. Kind of lost his way, and then he went back to remembering who he was as Peter after Hook kidnapped his kids, and he becomes the hero to them again. So I thought he was deserved on here. And then my last one. This is probably not the best dad in the world, but I thought he deserved to mention. That's Jack Torrance from The Shining. He brings his wife and son to this hotel so that they can look over it, and he can write, and then he slowly obviously descends into madness and eventually tries to kill them, but he ends up getting lost in a maze in the snow and freezes to death. And just a really iconic movie, and Jack Nicholson kills it as Jack Torrance. So I thought he definitely merited a mention as well.
Yeah, I just thought of one with all the Robin Williams love we've been giving. We could go with Armand Goldman from Birdcage. I mean, the steps he goes through to put up the charade for his son, so that the senator's wife, played by Kevin Keeley, played by Gene Hackman and Diane Weiss, they think everything is like what they think is quote unquote normal, and the charade he does with having to change the decor and tell Albert he can't be there, and having Christine Baranski as the mother show up, and just the hilarity ensues. Actually, another one of my wish list movies for Laugh in Theater. So Sean had a few. Also, he had Gil Buckman, because he mentioned a couple of Parenthood people in the last episode, in the Mom episode. He had Jim's dad as well. He had Brian Mills also, and he also had Darth Vader. Interesting pick.
That's an interesting pick. Yeah, that's an interesting pick.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. So that's going to bring an end to our Father's Day edition, talking about TV dads and movie dads. But before we go, let's go around the horn and talk about what pods you have out there, social media presence, anything you want to plug. So, Steve, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I and Miranda do Pop Coast Classics, where we were looking at all the Disney animated films. Our newest one dropped earlier this month on The Jungle Book. That was a lot of fun to talk about. And our next one will be in early July, which is The Aristocats. So another one I'm really kind of looking forward to talking about. Other than that, you can find me over at placebnation.com. I have my usual accoutrement of articles over there, the Vintage Vault previewing, the box office reports, and the wonderful list of Disney to complement the wonderful reviews of Disney. I'm currently ranking all the best songs, coming to the end of that finally after 244 songs. It's definitely been a trek, but I do have one more list after that, and that's ranking the movies. So be interested to see which one lands at the top there. Other than that, you can find me over, of course, at the Place to Be Facebook page. Lots of great stuff going on there every day.
All right. Yeah, The Jungle Book and The Aristocats, two of my favorite from that middle era, of Disney animated classics. So yes, always a great time with you and Miranda. Greg, what do you have going on in your pod world?
All right, so right now, when this goes up, It Was a Thing on TV. We'll have our latest drop either coming up, or at the time this is released, we'll be coming out with 2 episodes. First is the show Misfits of Science from NBC from back in 1985-86 with a young Courtney Cox. Yeah, Andy,
I remember that. I remember that show vaguely, but it totally rung a bell just now.
Yeah, and we'll also have a special episode on TV shows that had a pinball machine.
Okay.
Because me and Mike were big pinball fans, so we figured, this would be a great episode of talking about all the TV shows that had a pinball machine. And also into the Spidey movieverse, me and Chico were either about around this time or coming soon, we're going to be releasing our latest episode on the first Amazing Spider-Man movie from 2012. And you can follow our show on the social medias on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at It Was a Thing on TV.
All right. Calvin, what do you got to plug?
The only thing I have is the previous episode of this podcast where Andy, you, me, and Steve Bennett did road trip songs and summer songs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very funny as we're talking about this, and people are like, Robin Williams, Steve would have been like, R.I.P. Every band that Steve mentioned, it was somebody died. It was like having Rooney on the show. We're talking about dead wrestlers. And also, I want to say a big thank you to Sean Kidd and Scott Shiflett. I do a ton of pods with them, and unfortunately their schedule didn't allow them to be on the show, but they were kind enough to provide me with the list, which I really appreciate, so thank you guys. As for me, you can hear me on a variety of different shows. I've kind of gone to a monthly model with most of the shows. We have Blockbuster Rewind. I wasn't on the May episode because I don't like slasher films in terms of so the guys did Friday the 13th. That was Scott Crisco actually stepped in for me and was with Eric and Scott, and Jennifer Smith was the guest. This month it will be Miranda Berthel will be joining us on Blockbuster Rewind as we do the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I love those movies. Well, I love most of those movies. I like the rest of them. So I'm really looking forward to that show. Also, by this time, we will be getting into the finals coming soon of Trivia Night, and maybe somebody on this show made it that far. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But, Greg, I do wish you the best of luck in your upcoming semifinal matchup.
Oh, yeah.
And hope that, you do the best you can, and we'll see what happens. Also, we have, great debate, Laugh in Theater, Year in Pop, all kinds of great shows on the Wrestling Network. You can hear me on the wrestling version of this very show, Making Mount Rushmore, as well as there's a wrestling version of the Great Debate. And I promise I'm getting to that episode of Evolution. It's hard when your guest is 5 hours ahead on the other side of the ocean. So I will get together with my friend Callum McDougall, and we will break down the career of the one, the only HBK Shawn Michaels. I'm looking forward to that. That may have happened by the time you hear it. Also, check out 2 other feeds in the Quadapause. That is the Jenny position. That's Jennifer Smith's fine feed with all kinds of great shows, like you heard about Pluto and the Journey Through Infinity. Check out the North-South Connection with all kinds of great wrestling and pop culture shows. Lots of fun there. And check out the Place to Be group on Facebook that Steve mentioned. We have all kinds of different polls, and actually a tournament will be coming soon. Once Trivia Night is over. Trivia Night is very time consuming in terms of prep and edit. So once that beast has finished its season, then we will have a tournament. And also check out the Place to Be Nation Facebook page as well with lots of promotions. We have the Pop Experience on Twitter, and we have a new Instagram coming soon that will be run by Miranda. And yeah, all kinds of fun shows. So check us out. And also, we are now in our pilot season, which we've been doing we did last summer. We're going to do it for the entire summer. So if you have a podcast or an idea, or you want to be a guest on a podcast, you want to host a podcast that falls in the worlds of sports or pop culture, and you want to, come on the feed, let us know. Reach out to myself and Miranda, and you will submit a pilot or a pitch, and we will go through it. And yeah, again, pop culture, movie reviews, TV reviews, sports. We love it all. We have all kinds of variety here on this feed, and we're just one big family. So we welcome new members all the time. So I want to say a big thank you, though, to Steve Riddle, Greg Diener, and Calvin Crowell, and Sean Kidd and Scott Schiffer for providing lists as well. I am Andy Atherton. Thank you for joining us on Making Mount Rushmore. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Oh God.